Hello, I'm Jennifer Hagan. I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty at the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine. This video is on policies that you need to be aware of as a new faculty member at the School of Medicine. And there are some slides that will have long text regarding a policy, and for those slides, I'll invite you to pause your video so that you can read that rather than having me read through the entire policy. The objectives for this session are for you to understand how our values guide our policies at UNR Med, to help you know how to locate school policies, to help you understand the conflict of interest policy, to describe and demonstrate UNR Med's ideal learning environment, and to remind you to plan for time because we do have annual trainings related to some of our policies. So I'd like to start by setting the context with our UNR Med values. We have 4 core values, and these are that people are our strength, that we innovate and improve, we serve with integrity, and we succeed with trust and respect. We also have a diversity statement at the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine. And at UNR Med, we know that diversity promotes excellence, and so we've developed policies that help guide us in living all of these values from day to day. So what are the rule books? It's important for you to understand where the school sits in the system of higher education because there are rules at every level of the institution that guide our work. At the highest level is the Nevada System of Higher Education, and the Board of Regents has a handbook, and there are policies in this handbook that our rules have to be aligned with. For instance, the university bylaws, UNR's bylaws, are all aligned with the code that is in the NSHE Regents Handbook. And then finally, at UNR Med, we have policies and bylaws that have to be aligned with these other rule books. These get more and more detailed as you get closer and closer to the school level. So it's important to be aware of all of these guiding sets of rules. Just a little bit about UNR bylaws. This is the rule book for the university. One thing that's helpful to know, though, is that there is an administrative manual, and this manual defines these rules and helps people understand the rules and helps communicate these policies. So it's really a manual for providing guidelines as we do our work. The UNR Med, or our school bylaws and policies, can be found on the school's website. And this is a key point that I want you to remember from this presentation, that faculty employed by UNR Med have the opportunity to participate in creating the policies at UNR Med. This is because policies are identified by governing councils and drafted and updated by the UNR Med Policy Committee. So there's opportunities to serve on the councils and committees where this occurs. Additionally, when any new policy is created, it is discussed at faculty council, and every faculty member has a representative at faculty council, either through their administrative unit or through their department. And once a policy is ready for final approval, it is first vetted to the entire faculty at UNR Med. And during that period of time, you have a chance to weigh in and make comments about new policy. So now we're going to go through a few policies that you might want to remember. You won't remember the details about them, but you need to be aware that they exist and you need to know where to look for them. So remember, the UNR Med has a web page where all of these policies and our bylaws are posted for review. First, we're going to talk about some student policies. We're going to talk about the Code of Student Professionalism, student mistreatment, duty hours, fluid exposure, grade appeals, and supervision of medical students. So here's a case study for you to consider. A first-year student has been turning all of their required paperwork in late, as they have been brought on board to the school. And now that school has started, this individual has also been late for required class sessions and even for some examinations. As a faculty member, which of the following is the best choice for you to address this behavior? 1, berate the student for being lazy to shame them into showing up on time. 2, explain to the student that punctuality is expected and all will be forgiven if they wash your car and pick up your dry cleaning for a month. Or 3, talk with the student to learn about why they are late and discuss punctuality as a professional attribute. I hope that you picked 3. That's the correct answer here, and we'll talk about 2 policies that relate to this case. One is the Code of Professional Conduct for students. The key point here is that a part of the learning that occurs for medical students is their own development as a professional. Medical school is a time where they are developing their professional identity as physicians. It is a role of faculty members to help students learn that identity, both through role modeling and through dialogue. In this case, it would be an opportunity to have dialogue with the student about what's going on and what's expected of professionals. On the flip side of the coin is the student mistreatment policy. We want to create an environment that fosters learning. And this policy relates back to our school values of trust, respect, and integrity. The students are here to learn, and the environment that we create should foster that so that students feel comfortable asking questions and are in a state in which they can hear feedback and incorporate that feedback back into their learning. So we would not want to shame a student or really punish them for this behavior. We want to understand why they are exhibiting this behavior and help them understand how it needs to change. Another thing that's important to understand are duty hours. So duty hours, as defined by the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, so this would be resident physicians and individuals in the fellowship programs, the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education has very specific limits on the number of hours that an individual can work consecutively. And what we've done is say that the same policy is aligned with what students should be expected to do. So this is to avoid people arriving to work in a sleep-deprived state where they have trouble making important decisions. It also allows them to have enough time off to do the studying that is required to learn all the things that they need to be learning. As we move into our next section, here's a different case study. A student working with you suffers a needle stick injury while attempting to vaccinate a 2-year-old. Of the following options, which is the best choice? 1, wash the wound and start the student on HIV prophylaxis. 2, look up the procedure on the website for what to do after a needle stick. 3, ask the student to sign a release form to decrease liability. Here, the best answer is look up the policy on the website regarding needle stick injury or fluid exposure. It's called the fluid exposure policy. This is a great example, I think, of how to use our policies. You would never remember all of the details that you might read here. And the details might change over time. So all you need to know is that this policy exists and where to look for it. So pause your video at this point and give yourself a chance to read through this policy to familiarize yourself with it, but also know that it's available to you online at any time. The grade appeal policy is important for you to understand, mainly for the purposes of if you were approached by a student who was concerned about a grade, you would know to whom you need to refer that student. And essentially it boils down to referring them to the course or clerkship director. Again, pause your video and you can read through this policy. Fitness for duty. This policy is relating to students, and it states that students must be in an appropriate condition to take on their responsibilities. So they would need to address any medical, behavioral, or substance abuse issues that could potentially make them unfit for duty. Go ahead and pause your video and you can read through this procedure. Sorry, this policy. Finally, there's some important policies to remember that relate to student privacy and appropriate boundaries with students. One is a federal law, that's FERPA, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Another is that if you have provided health services to a student, you should not be involved in their assessment or promotion decisions. So FERPA stands for Family Educational Rights Privacy Act. Again, this is a federal law, and this means that the student's performance information and other information about them in the educational setting is private and requires their permission for that information to be released. So other than in our closed committee sessions, these matters should not be discussed. I'm going to just suggest that you pause and your video and read through this policy. More about student supervision. Any person who has scheduled supervision of medical students in clinical learning situations, all those people are required to have a faculty appointment with UNR Med. And there are a number of reasons for this, including liability issues. So be sure that if you have a colleague out in the community that you think would be a great teacher, before you send students their way, that this individual has an appointment with the school. Otherwise, refer them to the Office for Community Faculty. So now let's shift to some other policies about being a faculty member. We're going to talk about your clarity regarding things you can do as a citizen versus things you can do as a faculty member, also the conflict of interest policy, and our Title IX required training. Here's a case study to help us launch this section. The Reno Gazette-Journal calls to interview you about your thoughts on the next election relating to candidates' positions on healthcare, universal health care, abortion, and physician-assisted suicide. The reporter wants your opinion because you work at the medical school. Which of the following options are true? As a citizen, you are free to express your opinions to the press. 2, as a faculty member of the school, you may wish to decline this invitation. 3, as a faculty member of the school, you reach out to the communications team at UNR as a resource prior to responding to this request. It turns out that all of these are true. So this is a place where I suggest you pause your video and read through this policy that is from the System of Higher Education Code. So here are some of the policies that are also important for you to be aware of as a faculty member, and these relate to conflict of interest. We have a policy relating to conflict of interest, and you will be asked to sign an annual disclosure relating to any outside activities that from which you may have been paid. There's also a consulting activity form if you want to prospectively request permission to perform any outside activities. And this is required prior to performing those activities. So some simple do's and don'ts. Do be aware of these policies. I recommend that you go to the website as soon as this video is over and review those. Do everything with an eye towards avoiding any appearance of impropriety. Don't participate in consulting activities without written permission, and that is the link to the consulting activities form mentioned on the prior slide. And you can find all of this information and more at the Conflict of Interest website. There are strict rules around interactions with pharmaceutical representatives, and that has to do with the learning environment. These guidelines are available on our webpage as well. But what we want is to create a learning environment where medical students are not biased by commercial interests. We want the students to learn to make decisions based on science and not on marketing. There's a required Title IX training, and the purpose of this is to ensure that you and everyone else who is learning and working at the university has a right to work in an environment where they are judged on the basis of merit, ability, and potential without fear of discrimination. Sexual harassment is unacceptable and prohibited. So the take-home points from all of this are that you can find up-to-date and relevant policies on our website. Anytime you have a question about whether something is a policy, I encourage you to quickly look it up. It's as simple as typing things into Google or having your homepage be the School of Medicine and typing policy in the search bar for the School of Medicine web page. Also, review and comment new policies as they are created. You will be contacted by email, notified that a new policy has been created, and I encourage you to review it and comment if you have any concerns or questions. If you're asked to do any consulting work, proactively obtain permission from the school for that through the outside activities permission form. Also, plan that each year you will need to spend some time on annual trainings that relate to updating things such as Title IX training and completing your conflict of interest disclosure. As always, if you can't find the information you're looking for on the website, you can always reach out to the Office for Faculty for more information. Thank you.